there's nobody else that can compete with him in terms of the impact on not only Russia, but the world. Vladimir Putin is a force of stability in the world. We'll never give him credit here in the West. We contend we ignore the role that we played in global instability. But Putin was dealt a very weak hand, played it strong. I'm giving some poker analogies here. I don't know if Russians play poker.
I do.
Threw some cards in. He got some good cards, and now he has a very strong hand. He's in a good position. If I were a Russian, I would say a silent prayer of thanks that whatever divine being or circumstance you believe in, you were graced with a leader of his stature and his capability.
Yeah. You understand Russians. You understand other people. You understand not necessarily Russians. You just understand people.
Well, I'm trying. I make an effort. It's an honest effort, but I'm not arrogant enough to believe that I have solved the Russian puzzle. I just like I'm not arrogant enough to believe that I've solved the American puzzle. The beauty of humanity is the complexity of humanity, and the joy of life is the thrill of discovery throughout the journey. So I appreciate your kind words, but you should know that I don't believe I understand Russia yet, and I have a lot to learn. And that's why I am very much looking forward to travel to Russia, to meet Russians, to see parts of Russia that I've never seen, to experience it, to continue this journey of discovery so that I might better understand Russia. But I always have problems with somebody who says, well, I've learned everything there is to know. I'm like, well, then you're dead. Because
Exactly.
If you're arrogant enough to believe that you've learned everything there is to know, then we have no need to have a further discussion, because to me, a discussion is again, part of that journey of discovery. A discussion is a process that leads to new knowledge being absorbed. And once you absorb new knowledge, you reevaluate things and you come up with new ideas, and then you start the process all over again. It's about growth. So I appreciate it, but I think any Russian who meets me and talks to me, if they're honest, they're going to walk back and go, he doesn't know as much as we thought he knew, because I don't pretend to. I'm trying to learn, but just because I've read Tolstoy doesn't mean that I'm an expert on Tolstoy. It means I read Tolstoy.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm studying Tolstoy, but
your willingness to understand people.
That's
That's what is of most value for us and for other people. Well, when someone says, I know everything and I absorbed all the knowledge of the world, which not even Obi-Wan Kenobi or Yoda would say, unless they are there, it means, yes, the person knows maybe very little about himself. So, yes, that's what I meant. That's what I meant, your willingness to understand. And this is what life is about.
Yeah.
If you are willing to understand people, so you are most likely to do the right thing. And like, well, Colonel Frank Slade in one of my most favorite movies, Send a Woman with Al Pacino, said, when I came to crossroads, I knew exactly what the right path was, but I didn't take it because it was too damn hard. So, and if a person tries to understand, the person most likely to take the hardest step. So, and I really hope that I will do my best, well, to try being such person, because it's very hard.
It's very hard.
Yeah, it's very damn hard.
We always take a look at that and go, the easy path.
Yeah.
Easy.
The easy path.
I like that path. It's better. It's easier. But the thing about the easy path is when you finish, it's unfulfilling. When you take that hard path,
Yeah,
and you sacrifice and you struggle and you work. When you get to the end, you say, I earned this.
yeah,
I earned this and I accomplished something
absolutely.
and I developed as a person. But at the moment when you get at a crossroads, you're usually tired. You know, you got your pack on, you're like, oh, I'm tired. I had Easy Pass looking pretty good.
Yeah, and you come into the crossroads and say, "Oh, this again." Oh, gee.
Every crossroads will there be. Starting with the crossroads already.
Yeah. Yeah, many rivers to cross, but I don't seem to find my way over. Jimmy Cliff, a wonderful song.
Great song.
Really, really one of the best, in fact. Okay, here's a stuff which is making many people confused. Narishkin, you know exactly who the person is. Narishkin.
Yes.
Narishkin, yes. Says that Poland seeks to occupy part of Ukraine and is willing to step in with its peacekeepers, double quote, in some part of Ukraine, but trying not to be in contact with Russian forces. So, and exactly I wrote it down. Well, and what do you think about this? About this? And you mentioned talking at Jeff's show that Polish attempt to enter Ukraine would be a suicidal mission, which wouldn't be covered by Article 4 or 5. And most likely none of NATO countries would do anything to protect Poland or Polish forces, which would be on Ukrainian territory from the fatal defeat. But anyway, why Narishkin still thinks it's an issue?
Well, probably because he's the head of intelligence and he's receiving information that indicates it's still an issue. I mean, and let me also note that oftentimes in the intelligence business, and I don't pretend to speak on behalf of Mr. Narishkin or the Russian intelligence services because they have their ways of doing things and it's there. But in my experience, when senior intelligence officials are speaking about something in public, it's not the most sensitive intelligence because they wouldn't be talking about it. And B, they're speaking because they want to achieve an outcome. They're putting information out there to do something, to achieve an outcome. An intelligence officer doesn't go before the public and release classified information just for the sake of releasing classified information. It's not his job to make you and I feel we're informed. If he's going to do this, it's because he's been directed by a higher authority, the president, to release information for the objective of trying to shape a situation on the ground. And so my guess is that there has been what we would call chatter in the West, phone calls of a nature that didn't require, for instance, again, this is just hypothetical, but let's say that the SVR, the Russian intelligence services, was able to come in and tap the phone of the Polish president, prime minister. You would never release intelligence derived from that source because that source is so sensitive, you just don't want to give it up. So chatter is what happens when people far removed from the center of power are making phone calls that are easily intercepted, et cetera. That's chatter. So if you release something derived from that, it's very difficult to reverse engineer the statement back to the specific source. And it doesn't matter even if it did, because if person X23 stopped talking to person T32, it's not the end of the world. So my guess is it's this kind of information, chatter, that indicates that people are discussing something. And so by coming out and publicizing this, The idea is to get the senior Polish authorities to tamp down and say, no, we're not going. They want an outcome. And the outcome, I think, is to get the Polish government to say, we're not going to do this because the Russians are aware of it and we're not going to get away with this. And the practicalities of it, peacekeeping. In order for there to be peacekeeping, both sides have to want peace. They have to respect the status of peacekeeping forces. If one side, let's call it the Russians, doesn't respect the status of the peacekeeping forces, they're no longer keeping the peace. They're fighting a war. They're war fighters. So Poland can't come in and unilaterally, anoint a Polish armor division as a peacekeeping force. If they're not respected as such by the Russians, they are a Polish armor division that has invaded Ukraine. Now, there's another voice in here that has to be considered as well, and that is of President Lukashenko of Belarus.
Mhm.
He has made it clear that he will not tolerate, that he views as an existential threat, any concept of Poland extending its contact with Belarus to the southern borders through Western Ukraine to the south, that will not be an acceptable thing. And so the feeling I got from listening to him is that while he is not inclined to put Belarusian forces into Ukraine, he will support the Russian special military operation as he has done, but Belarusian forces won't cross into Ukraine, that this would change if Poland were to intervene. And then we have to understand that the Russians have said straight up, they won't, Polish troops coming into Western Ukraine as peacekeepers. There's an old saying that goes back to the Middle East, but when a camel is outside the tent and they stick their nose in, once the camel's nose is in the tent, it won't stop until the whole camel is in the tent. And so from the Russian perspective, a Polish peacekeeping force is the nose of the NATO camel. And if you allow that to stay there, NATO will end up in Ukraine. That's 100% outcome.
That's what they were talking about Donbass back in 2014. What? Peacekeepers? Haha, tell us about it. We know who those peacekeepers would turn into exactly.
Yeah. So I think that Narushkin is Mr. Narushkin. I don't mean to be disrespectful. Not playing. Playing's the wrong word, but he's conducting a diplomatic game. And by game, I mean, it's a chess match. You're putting
Exactly.
So what he's done is he's taken, Queen's bishop to, King's. He's made a move, and now we'll see how Poland responds, and how NATO responds. Because remember, the move is being made not just for a Polish audience, but for a NATO audience. Because NATO is going to sit there and go, Poland, if you go in there, if we haven't convened an Article 4 hearing where we've given you NATO blessing, you're going in naked. And if you get attacked, we can't come to your assistance because we're not going to go to war with Russia over Ukraine. There's a wild card in here too. Zelensky went to Poland, I believe, recently. And there was talk about somehow erasing the border between Ukraine and Poland. And